Okay, is everyone ready? Comfortable? Yeah. Okay, well, thank you guys so much for coming. This is our second event. My name is Rachel. I'm the organizer of this event. I want to thank George and with WebMocha. He sponsored the video today. Found 3 of the speakers. He's been really helpful. Where is he?
He's back.
Hiding. And then Tristan, I don't think he's here, also helped as well with some of the organizing stuff today. And so we're going to start. Is all the video ready? Okay, great. So we'll start with introducing the panel. If you can say your name, your current position, and the name of your company. So we'll start with you, Jonathan.
Cool. Jonathan.
Oh, wait, sorry.
So Jonathan Gresley, run a small UX product design company out of Berkeley, and the name of the company is Robot Koala.
Hi, I'm Carlos Cervantes, and I'm currently a senior software engineer at Google.
Hello everyone, my name is Arlene, and I'm an engineering manager at Skillz. So for those who don't know what that is, so Skillz is an esports tournament platform. So I'm basically leading the feature development team here in San Francisco.
Hi, I'm Abby Poquez Cervantes. I'm the Director of Program Management and Electronic Arts.
Hi, my name is Adrian Acala. I am a site reliability engineer at Chegg.
Okay, so we're going to start off with questions, and then if we have time, we'll also have a Q&A if anyone has any questions for everybody. So the first question is, how long have you been working in tech, and how did you end up choosing this path?
So I guess my first job in tech was, my first job in tech was while I was going to junior college. I started out as a sysadmin, or like a junior sysadmin for a toy store called, like a huge chain toy store called Imaginarium. That was like 1995, so I don't know, do the math. 24 years, long time. What got me into tech? I started taking programming classes in 3rd grade. And I mean, it was like basic. And I started toying around with writing simple programs, and I was really lucky that my mom and my stepfather had like very interesting computers that you could kind of write code, like basic code on. And so I started hacking and just started getting into it there. But then I resisted it because in that era, software engineer was sort of like the nerds, did stuff like that. So initially when I went to college, I actually tried to do everything else and then sort of fell back into it.
So I had a similar, well, actually it was more of a, I think it's kind of a more conventional, traditional path. I got into it. I majored in electrical engineering, computer science in college. And I did do some programming when I was a kid, mostly like on a Commodore 64, if you guys remember that. So yeah, I've been doing this as a career for about 25 years now. So when I went to college, I kind of did something similar where I knew I wanted to do engineering. I didn't think I wanted to do computer science because it just, at the time, it didn't seem as interesting to me as something like mechanical engineering. And then I got to mechanical engineering, and I found that I liked the programming classes the best. And I had the most fun there, and I was enjoying myself. And then I also found that I hated thermodynamics, and I couldn't do the math. And I said, I'm going to do the computer stuff. I like that a little bit better. And and then here I am.
Arlene?
Yeah, so I've been in tech for about 13 years now. And I actually graduated in computer science. I took up computer science in University of the Philippines. So I actually grew up in the Philippines and moved here in 2012. So I think a lot of it was due to influence from my family. So both of my older siblings were software engineers at the time. So definitely, that was a big factor to that. And tech was really booming during that time in the Philippines. So either you take up, software engineering, computer science, or nursing in the Philippines, right? So those are two most popular ones at the time. So, and I really enjoyed, my programming classes in high school. I did a bit in grade school in the Philippines, but it's not like really a thing, I think, during that time in the Philippines, most especially. So when I was so I really enjoyed my computer science classes, and I eventually joined different tech companies in the Philippines. One of which is Friendster. I don't know. Do you guys remember Friendster? Who here remembers Friendster? Yeah, awesome. So that time it was very, very popular, right? It was very popular in the Philippines, in Asia, probably here too. I don't know. But it's a San Francisco based company, and then after that I moved to another company called Acme, and that's the company that basically got me in here. That's where the chunk of my career had been. I was there for 8 years, so after that I moved to different companies here in the U.S. Postmates after Friendster, after Acme, and then so now I'm at Skillz.
I took my first computer science class in high school, AP Computer Science, but I was a business major in college, and I, from college, went to Accenture as a process analyst. But of course, this was in '96, and the dot-com boom was starting to happen. So left there to join a HR IT consulting firm that got bought out by one of the services we would do implementations for. And a week after 9/11, that startup wasn't able to get their next round of funding. So I was let go when I was 5 months pregnant. From there, I stayed home for 5 years, and then I was able to find a job as a QA lead at Electronic Arts, and was working on technical programs, and just continued to progress my way from there.
Hi, mabuhay. So I broke my first computer when I was 6. I was playing around. We got a computer. We got Windows 3.1, which was before 95. I wanted to install a video game, and I ran out of hard drive space, because who does that nowadays? And so I went into DOS and I tried to figure out how to delete the largest file out there, and it was win.exe, which was the Windows program. And so I didn't have Windows for a long time, and I played with DOS for a long time, and I just literally just hacked ever since then. I took my first HTML class when I was in 7th grade. I just loved hacking and playing around with trying to get things working, like websites. I would look in the source code and kind of play around with it. And then Friendster and MySpace came along, and then you could build HTML stuff. It was really cool. You got to see things and build things. That's something that I've never been able to do in school, right? You're able to see something that you've done for yourself. I thought that was amazing. And so I was always gravitated towards computer science, computers, or tech in general. And then I wanted to go into a major. And I said, hey, I want to do computers. And my parents, at the time, it was about 2005. We just got out of the dot-com bubble. And my parents were like, no, maybe you shouldn't do the dot-com bubble. We have a lot of friends that had kids that went into tech, and maybe you should do that as a side project. So I said, all right, I'll go into applied math. So I did applied math, took 13 calculus courses, and I still haven't taken a derivative after I've graduated. But after I graduated, I worked as a front-end engineer first, and then I did a little bit of back-end, and then I started building stuff. And eventually I came to a point where, hey, I want to deploy some of the stuff that I did. So I did back-end stuff and system stuff, and then that's how I got into SRE and keeping websites up and running.
Okay, so some of you kind of touched on it before, and one thing that came up in our previous panel was a lot of people in our panel, their parents weren't supportive of them being in tech. It's not something that you necessarily consider like Filipinos in tech. That's the whole reason why I started doing this, is at my old company, there was like 3 Filipinos at that company. So I just wanted to know if you guys had that experience, if your parents were welcoming in tech, if you kind of had that growing up with other family members, and if you they had any issues with you joining tech.
So I'm Papa, and so it's really interesting. My dad, who's Caucasian, he was a math major in college, so he's like very sort of logical, but he's computer illiterate. so there was like really no sort of support there. Like we didn't have my parents divorced when I was really young. In that house, there was really no computer or anything to really sort of dabble in terms of software. My mom was sort of the complete opposite. So my mom is right now she's 75. She's probably the most technical baby boomer I've ever met. She gives tech support to all the relatives, and tries to help them with their purchases and stuff like that. So growing up, just got a ton of support over there, and really, really fortunate that was the case. I started taking things apart, got in a lot of trouble. Not necessarily my computers. I was breaking other people's computers, but I would put them back together and they would work again. And so not really the same in terms of the support issue.
So for me, I come from a very kind of working class family. My dad, he's retired Navy janitor at the post office after he retired from the Navy. All of my cousins and and their dads, kind of very similar situations. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and she didn't even have her high school diploma. She actually got a GED sometime after I graduated from college. So I was one of the very first people to actually even go to college. So most of the people in my family had no idea what computer science was. It took me forever to explain to them, I'm not the guy who fixes computers. I actually write programs. So I'm sure that other software engineers in here kind of have had this experience. They're like, hey, my Windows isn't running correctly, or I think I have a virus, can you take a look at my computer? I used to get that question all the time from my uncles. And so I never got any kind of pushback, but I also never got any guidance. So so my sister went to college, but she got an accounting degree, and she's 13 years older than me, so she got a degree. And then the next person in the extended family to go to college was one cousin, and then me. So out of 40 or 50 cousins growing up in Oxnard and Southern California, I was the third person in the whole family to go to college. So I had to kind of find my own way, and they were just excited that I was going to college, and that that I got into a good school, and that I was going to do big things or whatever. So I never got pushed back, like I said. But it was really great was that after me, a few of my cousins, the younger ones, they actually went to computer science, and so they kind of reached out to me, and I did what I could to help them out, and I had nephews and nieces who tried to go that route as well, and so that was actually kind of a nice opportunity for me to take.
That's awesome.
So for me, it's quite different. Like I mentioned earlier, my older brother and my older sister is also, they're both software engineers who are now also engineering managers in the Philippines. Both of them are in the Philippines. So, and so I really got a lot of influence from them. I initially was thinking of taking up nursing, like I mentioned earlier. Those are two things. But so my brother and my sister really influenced me in the sense that I see them. I think my sister was actually still in college during that time. My brother was working already as a software engineer, and I do see them that they're actually succeeding in their careers, right? So there's a lot of factor like that. And then my mom actually is my mom is a math major. My dad is in commerce, I think. So I think it's really my siblings' influence on me that made me really take up and be in this career, take this field and path, right? Yeah.
So I was a business major, which was what my parents were business majors as well. So I didn't get resistance from that perspective because I was doing the same type of thing. And by the time I moved into what was more formally tech, that was much more understood. We're in the dot-com boom, so they could see that value. So I would say that because I wasn't going straight into tech, there wasn't a resistance. Although it was always, be a doctor, be a lawyer, go into business, right, that sort of thing. That was the same influence for me.
So yeah, I got a lot of pushback. So my parents were both medicine. They wanted me to go into medicine. I grew up in the Central Valley of California, right nearby Fresno, in a small town that was about 18,000 people. So tech wasn't really booming over there. It wasn't anything great over there, and not very many people got into it there. And so I understand, right? It's foreign to them to that getting into tech, and so they didn't have any friends that many friends that got into tech, and so I understood that they're just looking out for me. They want me to get the best possible job that I can get when I graduate out of college, right? And so I agree. I mean, I understand where they're coming from, where they're trying to push me back, like they want the best for me. And then it's kind of like doing what you want to do for yourself and what you find interesting, what you enjoy doing. And tech is a very lucrative environment at this point, and I think we should all help everybody else here as Filipinos to help get into tech. And I think one thing that's important is that culture is a big thing for Filipinos, and family is a big thing for Filipinos. And so I think as more and more of us come together into tech as Filipinos, I think it could become a big force as well.
Okay, so the next question is entering tech. Like, did you guys have any difficulty, especially you two are both like women and higher up at your companies, and then men as well. Did you experience any like difficulty or like feel any type of like nervous? I think like going to a company where tech is known to be like predominantly like white males, and going to the space, and especially like becoming leaders in the space, like did you have any like pushback? Did you feel like any, like how did you overcome that, and or did you not experience any of that? Does that make sense? I kind of circled with that question.
So I think one of the big challenges actually was, so one is being brown, and then two is sort of the Asian genetics make you look younger. And so when I was young, like when I was first getting into tech, I got a lot of advice from managers or supervisors to say, make sure that you phrase your recommendations from the standpoint of like a passive voice. I remember very distinctly like making recommendations and feeling very sure of myself, and thinking like I analyzed this to death, like this is a good like strong recommendation, this is the right way we should take the project, and then just kind of having people take me aside and say like, don't use that tone. And that was really interesting. Yeah, I think it actually probably got me laid off once or twice. And no, and not to say that I really don't think that I was like arrogant or pushing the boundaries, but I think it was to some degree ageism, and I don't know if there was like a racial component to it. There might have been. Yeah. So how did I overcome it? I worked my butt off. I strived to make the projects that I worked on as successful as possible all the time. And if anything, I think early on in my career, I was sort of a workaholic. So if I actually kept track of my hours, there were times where I was working between like 80 and 120 hours a week. And that sort of drove me like to my limit. But the projects were very successful. And then that eventually sort of won people over, and I got more ownership of more things, and that was good. Yeah, and I mean, I actually didn't think of it as like overcoming like a specific adversity that was just uniquely to me. I just thought like everyone has to go through this, like paying your dues sort of thing. But I don't know. Maybe there was more to it. Maybe not.
So I think I also experienced a little bit of that ageism. I remember someone specifically telling me, I think it was in jest, but they said, I remember it was a conversation between a white man who I shared a room with, I shared an office with, an Asian woman, an older Asian woman, and myself. And he said something to the effect of, I would definitely card you, but I would card you, and pointing at me, I would card you for cigarettes. It was kind of, it was, I think it was done in jest, but that was definitely there for me. As far as being like the only brown person on the team, I was the only brown person on the team. There were 2 other Asian people on the team of Chinese descent, Chinese immigrants actually, and they so it was a relatively diverse team. So I actually definitely didn't feel any kind of racism. It definitely helped that one of the senior people on the team was an African American man, and he and I very much connected. And so I kind of, he wasn't exactly a mentor, but I definitely got some mentorship from him. Yeah, so I think, generally speaking, I think I've had I don't want to say easy road of it, but I wasn't consciously aware of any kind of adversity.
So I think because I grew up in the Philippines, right? So I had probably 4 or 5 years experience before I moved here. So 4 years being, being in the Philippines, working as a woman there in tech, it's common, right? And a lot of there's tech in the Philippines at that time was really, very popular. So when I moved here, right, it's also with the same company that I was in for 3 years in the Philippines, so-called Acme, and then they basically sponsored my work visa here, and I was there for a total of 5 years. In the San Francisco office, so total of 8 years being in that company, and I guess I was actually the only woman in the back-end engineering team, and also so basically I was managing a team of men, and it wasn't. I guess it wasn't hard for me because I was there before them. I don't know if that makes a difference. I think it does. So I was, like I said, I was the first engineer in that team, basically. So when I moved here, it was actually a lot easier for me too. And then that's actually where I've grown from being a software engineer to a team lead to an engineering manager. So I guess it was a problem for me, especially being a woman and entering tech in the U.S., right? Because I already was in that company for a long time. and then after Ad Comido, so I was I was open for new opportunities. I was looking around. I find it harder. I found it harder. I don't know. I wasn't consciously thinking about like me being a woman or me being a Filipino. I don't think that's the case though. I didn't feel like, especially in my interviews, I didn't feel any bias at all. And then so I landed a job at Postmates, and then after that at Skillz, which is esports, right? So I think gaming, which probably is true for you too. I think it's so I think there's so much diversity in at Skillz. So and we're trying to push that to be more conscious about diversity and in hiring, right? And so I guess so to for me it wasn't like you said earlier. I guess it was quite an easier. I don't want to say it's easy road, but of course I wasn't just I didn't see any issue me being a Filipino or me being a woman, but I definitely noticed that I am the only woman. For example, at Skillz right now, I'm actually managing a team of men again. So I'm definitely and that's something that I want to change for sure, right? And so I'm hiring. So that's for me.
So for entering tech, I didn't run into issues. Again, I started in consulting, so very diverse group. Was working out of San Francisco at Accenture, where I really dealt with more discrimination, I guess, was after taking time off with my kids and coming to EA. So I was hired as a relatively entry-level QA lead. Most of my peers were relatively new out of college, computer science majors, and I would say my manager definitely had a bias towards them over me. At first it was more subtle, it wasn't that big a deal, but it became a bigger deal as I tried to kind of push to progress. And I remember when I had my third, I had been with EA a couple of years, stayed in my QA group because I wanted to be able to continue to progress. I didn't think it made sense to switch jobs. And I came back to talk to my manager about promotion, and he said, well, if I had to look at you versus your peer, I would promote your peer because she was here the whole year and you were not. And that was a tough one because I had 3 little ones at home. I thought that, perhaps I would have a lawsuit that I could take up, but I had no energy. Anyone with young kids can understand this, right? No energy for that. So I just kind of kept my head down, kept moving forward. Luckily, I made an ally of my manager's peer, who was a mom of 3. And thankfully, when the time came, she stood up for me with their shared manager. And because of that, I know she kept me from getting let go of my job. But again, if not for her, I wouldn't still be at EA. And it was after that period of time that I was able to more formally get into tech. I became a dev manager, reported to a CTO of technology, built a very strong relationship with him. He had tremendous respect for me. And that's when I think my tech career really took off. So what I would say is what made the difference was doing a really, really, really good job. Being very cognizant and building my relationships and making sure that those were always as strong as they could be, and taking very strong responsibility for anything I touched. I also got very good at saying things that were pushbacks, but making the other person feel like we are in this together, this is for the better of the program, so that they are always feeling like she's not pushing back, this is about the best for the program, right? And trying to understand where they are coming from so that I can also frame it for why it would be important to them. So I got really, really, really good at that because I had to, and part of it was because I always had to figure out how do I continue to keep my job, how do I be able to support my family, and perhaps if I didn't have the kids and the expenses to pay, I wouldn't have worked so hard to be that careful, but it has served me well.
For me, I grew up in the Fresno area, as I said earlier. There was mostly white people mostly Mexican, and very few Asians, very few anything else really. And so I did notice that it was different, and then of course I'm being different as well, being a nerd, being a geek. I definitely wasn't a normal kid, right? I like to be by myself. I like to do my own things. I was different. I wouldn't blame it as a race or a culture or anything. It was just me being me. And so when I went to high school with the same kids that I went to in middle school and elementary school, and then when I went to college, everything changed. There was so many different people. There's so much diversity there that I was, oh wow, there's a lot of people that I've never interacted with before. And there's bunches of different cultures and food. Oh my gosh, the food's so good. And then I think that, I want to say that once I got a job, I mean, I kind of just put my head down. I worked real hard, and I noticed there's a lot of different people with that are not normal, that are very to themselves. And so what I liked to do was talk to them and try to make friends with people like me. And there was always some sort of camaraderie, and then I could always find a mentor in every group that I went to, and I could leverage friendship from people that were just like me, that weren't comfortable being around a lot of people. And so I think that's one thing as well for tech people, or people that really like computers, to just be by themselves. And I think that's a big challenge, at least for me.
Okay. So the next question is, how do you feel about the current Filipino representation in tech, at your companies, at previous companies? Have you seen a lot of other Filipinos? As I mentioned, at my last company, there was 3 of us. It was a company about 400 people, so still very small. And then Filipinos kind of end up putting in the Asian bucket, which is generally a lot larger than Filipinos, and our cultures are still very different. So I just want to know what your experience is, and if you've seen a lot of higher level, C-level directors in tech as well. That was a big inspiration for this panel, was that it was a lot of younger people in tech, and they had mentioned they don't see a lot of why are there not more Filipinos that are CEOs or different things? Why aren't we seeing that? And so this was the goal, to kind of get more people that have been in tech for a bit longer and kind of get your experience on that.
So actually, before I answer that question, I just wanted to touch on, I noticed that I said in the last round that I worked my butt off and that's how I succeeded, or that's how I got over it. And I just wanted to clarify, I could probably actually answer that better. I think, so I don't advise anyone to work a crazy amount of hours. That's actually the wrong way to go about it. That was the way that I thought I should do it at the time. I've succeeded, or I've worked on teams where we've had successful projects because of teamwork, collaboration, good communication, camaraderie, not overworking, and pushing your own comfort zones. And if you can encourage your teammates to also push their comfort zones, if you have a very supportive environment like that. It took me a long time to learn that, but that I think is actually what makes teams successful together. So anyway, sorry.
No, great. That was a great answer. Yeah.
So sorry, what was this question?
About representation, in Filipinx in tech, what is your experience with that? Either previous companies now, and if you've seen a lot of higher level Filipinos in tech, because that was inspiration for this panel. Is the last one everyone was asking where are all the high level Filipinos, and so I've kind of been seeking that and finding a lot of people.
Yeah, this is the most I've ever seen in one place. I was actually just having this conversation earlier. throughout most of my career, I have a hard time even saying there was this one Filipino person that I worked with, and I was like pressing myself to come up with it, and then I was like, oh yes, actually there was a woman that was half, and so she was very light skinned, and so she kind of it wasn't glaring that she was Pinay, but I was like, oh yeah, that's right, she had partial Filipino heritage like me. But so, I mean, one of the reasons why I came to this panel was that it was really interesting. Like when I still worked at a startup, we had just gotten acquired and things were sort of ramping down. A lot of people were jumping ship, and we had to hire a bunch of new people. And there was this guy that was an applicant, and his first name was Miguel, and his last name was Spanish. And so in sort of like in a vacuum, without seeing a photo, we had no idea what his ethnic background was. And I just remember seeing that a lot of people were just kind of like that's kind of a name you don't see very often. And so a lot of people were kind of just like dismissive, like that's probably not going to be a good candidate. And then so I started, like a bunch of us started jumping in and looking through the resume. And I even found myself like feeling, wow, it's really uncommon to see someone apply with the first name Miguel. I mean, I can't remember what his last name was. He was actually Hispanic, ended up looking Caucasian, but he was like more Spain Spanish. But what really resonated with me is my middle name is Miguel, and so I was just like, wow, like if that ended up being my first name, how would people, because I have a very like Caucasian sounding name.
Yeah, me too.
And so I was like, what would people think if they just sort of got my resume? That wasn't all that long ago, but so when I started seeing Filipinx, I was like, wow, like we as a community sort of really need to pay more attention to this. And sort of strive for increased diversity and inclusion, because it's not that like again referencing one of my answers earlier, it's not that I necessarily can say, oh yeah, that was racist or that was the experience that I felt, but it could definitely improve.
So yeah, actually, Jonathan and I were talking about this earlier, and I was thinking about, in my career I've been through quite a few companies, and it was a long time before I worked with another Filipino, and I think it might have been George. I think he might have been the very first like Filipino software engineer that I actually worked with. Before that, yeah, honestly, I'm not sure if I can think. I mean, well, no, that's not true. I now remember now. My cousin who recruited me for a startup that I worked at, actually Abby's cousin, she's benign, so obviously. And so that was like the other person before George. And since then I haven't, like I've worked with like a handful here and there, but it's definitely hasn't been common. And even in the startups that I work with, when I did work with other Filipinx people, it was like admins and other like non-technical positions, but I still like treasured those relationships, no matter who they were in the company, what role they played, because I see so few people, so few Filipinx people in my day to day. And I just kind of more recently became more conscious of this and had the desire to kind of take this on again, which is why I agreed to be a part of this panel. Because I had a passion for this back when Abby and I were in college. It was a big part of who we were and what we did. We were very active in the Filipino community at Cal. And then more recently, my daughter Angel is looking to get into computer science, and I want to, I'm inspired to help try to create an environment where she doesn't feel alone. She doesn't feel like she's the only one like her in that environment. And so I started to connect more with other Filipinos at Google. We have a group called FGN, Filipino Googlers Network, where we kind of have find other people. And so there are through that I've discovered there are a few people like there's a woman Regina. She's been at Google since. So her employee number's in the low 500s. So that tells you how long she's been there. So I've met her. I've met a person who's a director of a group of about I don't know a couple hundred people. So they are there. Oh, and then a friend of ours from college I just discovered has joined, and he's kind of in the entrepreneurial section of Google X. This is a gentleman named Ray Benatow, and so I'm starting to see them. But also, I've been looking for them. So that was the other thing that I think before I wasn't actually, like there was a long period where I was just kind of heads down trying to survive, raise 3 kids, deal with a crashed economy, all of this stuff. But now that I've kind of I've been able to come up for air, I'm starting to remember what was important to me, and I'm actually looking for that and starting to look for that network. And I do think it's important that as a community, we do that.
So for me, I think in the 3 organizations I've been in, 3 companies I've been in here in the US, I'd say about 5 out of like 300 employees for each of those companies, right, are Filipinos. So most of them are either in HR, admin, recruiting, engineering. There are a few engineers who came with me when I moved here in the US, so they came a year after me. But I'd say on the average it's about 5, so that's like 2% of the entire company size, right? So so right now at Skillz there's about 4 of us, and I'm the only one in engineering. Again, something that I want to change. I think it's we're still really underrepresented, right? And I think gatherings like this, events like this, really would help a lot. Like when I saw the event last year, right? Our very first Filipinx in Tech event, I was really excited, like because I was looking around, like looking at Eventbrite, Meetup, and all this. Groups in LinkedIn, right? And I'm trying to find some events that I could attend. I usually go to conferences, meetups, and I didn't really find a lot, right, of Filipino events, Filipino tech events. So I was really happy last year when I saw that event, and I was there in San Francisco when we had the first one. And that's how I met Rachel as well. I think it's really valuable it's really helpful to have such community. And I think the problem right now is that people are not aware that they exist. I think we should and we should have more and more events like this, right? It doesn't have to be like formal event like this. It could be like grab a drink or something like that. We could have groups, and I'm happy that Rachel actually started that Facebook group and LinkedIn group. So that's very, very helpful, I think, in promoting that hey, we actually exist and we're here to support you, right? So not just for Filipinos who already are in tech, but Filipinos who want to get to tech, right? So to get into tech. So I think having those venues and having that, just knowing and having that awareness that these types of organizations exist, that's really gonna help sort of promote and have I hopefully that solves it. But I don't know, we're still really underrepresented. That's what I think.
So there aren't many Filipinos at EA that I know. I think I know a handful, and of the ones I know, I'm the most senior. I remember when I was at Accenture, there was one woman manager when I was entry level. That was awesome, and I clung to her as a mentor, and she was really generous with her time and great. In general, in tech, I mean, women, there are not many women above my head, much less Filipinos. So I know one other woman above my head within Central Technology, which is the department I'm in. The other Filipinos I know, I hired one, so yay, I'm one on my team. And I know a couple in other organizations, Game Team and EAX or Origin. But yes, we need more of them. And luckily for EA, we have employee resource groups, so we have a Women's Ultimate team, we have a recently started Asian group, Aspire. I'm not remembering what it stands for, but it's an Asian group. We're Black, we have Latino, or Hispanic, we've got gay, lesbian, we've got accessibility. So those have been helpful. I haven't necessarily had time to invest in a lot of these, but one that I am getting involved in is one around helping the CTO organization hire more women who are doing career changes or have taken time off. So we're looking at creating more returnship type programs. And for me, that is very close to my heart after my experience. So getting to be a leader in establishing that program for me is very exciting.
At my last company, I worked under the architecture team, and my boss was a tall white guy, and his boss was actually a Filipino. And he was probably in mid-30s or late 30s. You can never tell with Filipinos, right? And so, yeah, he managed, say, probably 150 some people in IT. So I thought that was really promising. I also, before he got hired, I met a Filipina that was extremely senior in programming, and she was amazing. It was really cool to hang out with her. And then, of course, there's a bunch of Filipinos in different sectors, different regions of the company that we were at. But in IT, in tech specifically, there was those. But one thing I want to say that is fairly promising is that being raised in the Fresno area, I met with a lot of white people, and a lot of them like our culture. They like how we give them food a lot, except maybe the what's it called? That egg with the chicken. It's balut. Yeah, the balut. They think that's kind of weird.
So do I.
Ooh, it's yummy. But they love our culture. They think we're so hardworking, and I think that's promising. That's very promising that our culture stands out as masipag, hardworking, or very kind, very friendly. That's our culture. That's what we're known for, and that's great things to be known for. Maybe except the Filipino time, that might not be too great. But every culture is like that. So I really like where we're headed towards as a Filipino community, and just gotta embrace it.
So I just want to go quick note for what Arlene said is, I did get the idea to do these events because I was looking for events. I didn't find any, and then I decided, why don't I just try to find people and make a panel? But I mean, I'm definitely open to doing all types of events. Like, you know, it'd be nice to have like happy hours and different things. So if anyone has ideas, anyone has anything like that, like I'm definitely happy to like help make that happen. Right now, it's mostly just like me doing everything. So if any, people want to like help organize stuff, definitely open to anything. It's great to see like new faces. The first event, I was expecting like 10 people, and like 50 people showed up. And I didn't know like anyone, so that was good. It wasn't people that like I knew that I brought. So just keep that in mind. We have a LinkedIn and Facebook groups and stuff like that. So just come find me. And then I just want to check in because we do have to be out of the space at 8. It's 7:17. I just want to check if anyone had any questions for them before I continue with my questions. If anyone had any questions that they wanted, I want to make sure like people got that in if they had any. Anyone? Don't be shy. Totally fine if you don't. Just wanted to throw that out there. Anyone? Oh.
Thanks,
Thank you. Being a woman, being a Filipina, very hard to climb the ranks, if you will, in tech. So this question is for the ladies in the panel. How did you find mentors to help you grow, help you get to that level? Because I'm feeling like I'm stuck. I'm stuck in an IC role. How do I get into, which is individual contributor for those that don't know, how do I get to the next level, or what are your recommendations on what to do?
So I think it's really, really important to have a mentor, both internally and externally, like within the company and outside the company. So in my experience at Acme, like I said, I was there for 8 years. So I started as an engineer, got a few promotions, and what's very important is to express your interest early. Like if you, what I find really helpful, like looking back, I feel like one thing that I did right was really to bring up that my interest in management in my first year at Acme. So my manager at that time then was able to help me grow into that career, into that path, right? So because as a software engineer, right? So you could either take a technical path or a management path, leadership path. So it was like very early in my career, I already know that it's the management path I wanted to take. So I definitely brought that up early. During my first year in Acme, and I told him, my manager at that time, right, that hey, this is the I really wanted to do management, and I want to eventually move to a management role. So he groomed me of course it took several steps, right? It's an easy path, but he groomed me. I was like a Scrum Master for a few years. That helped help me build different skill sets, right? Project management. Yeah, I work a lot with different the different teams, right? Not just engineering. I work with program management, product management, with the different business teams, right? So you kind of get that experience, build that experience, and then he also, like, I was lucky enough also that my manager was a really great mentor. And so he helped me a lot towards my career. And then I became a team lead. And then, I actually shadowed this a new manager already at that time. So basically, he was the VP of engineering. I shadowed him for about a year first before I completed the transition to a management role. So that helped me, because that's going to be my first time managing people, right? And it's a different skill set also, right? So I gotta learn that, and I really transitioned for a year first before I completely moved to management. So that's one. So internal mentor, and then externally I had, because I attended manager boot camp in UC Berkeley. So that was a great program, and I met a lot of great people there. One of the speakers, he offered, his expertise. He offered, if you want to reach out and to know more about, because I was managing distributed teams, and this guy was actually, his focus in that boot camp was around distributed teams. So I actually reached out to him after that boot camp. It was like just a week long boot camp. So basically, after that, I reached out to him, and we chatted on Skype. I don't know why Skype, but we chatted on Skype, and he gave me tips and whatnot, right? So he was my external mentor, and that made me see different things outside my organization, right? What are the things that I could improve on in my current organization, right? So I think, yeah. So to summarize, so I think those are two things, right? So, well, three. So first is, make sure that you know, I think it really helps if you already know early what path you actually want to take, and bring that up early. Second is having that internal mentor, and then third is external mentor.
For me, how I found mentors was more as I worked with them, when I saw people who were doing things that impressed me, and I was working with them, then I would just keep building on that relationship. So maybe it was, hey, can we go out for coffee? And if that feels like a good connection, just keep asking, can we meet once a month for just to check in. So I've been fortunate that I've always found people, and I've always made those connections and kept building on them. So at first it was that woman who stood for me, who was another mom. She was instrumental for me. That CTO who was my VP when I was first a dev manager. Again, generally if you start with that initial coffee or whatever it is, and you see that there's a connection, you just ask for more, whether it's once a month, whatever it is, and then you just ask them those questions, and you learn from them. And for me, because I've always respected those people, I could learn from watching them, I could learn from asking questions, and I was able to also find like the next opportunities through them. But as many as you can like work out, like it wasn't like I just stuck to two. I've had others as I've moved along, I've developed a good relationship with this person, I ask for advice, it just keeps continuing. So I'm fortunate in that way, but I've also built and managed those relationships, really valued the relationship and the time that they spend with me.
I just want to. So I think I totally agree on what you said. So I think one thing that really helped me as well is building that relationship with the different people in my company, different people in the organization, and not. So like I said earlier, like I worked with the different business units, right? So I built that relationship with them, and I think it's very important to have that kind of relationship. So you could also not. It doesn't have to be like a formal mentorship, right? You could definitely get tips and whatnot from those people as you work with them. And not, even not in work setting, right? And it's been really helpful to just have a coffee with them, meet with them on one-on-ones and whatnot. Yeah, so I totally I just want to mention that I totally agree. And also like I've met with like the what was his role, like some VP levels as well. So that kind of helped me a lot too. But I was there for 8 years too. So I understand like different organizations, probably bigger companies, you can't talk to VP or CTO or whatnot, right? But if you can, right, definitely do that too, and establish that.
Hey everybody, thanks for coming. And my question is to you, just a little background on me. I'm a technical recruiter. I hire software engineers in the Bay Area. And some common questions I run into are, do people negotiate their salaries? And I guess for me, my family, don't talk about two things, money and politics. So if I ever got a job, if I ever got an offer, I was like, oh, okay, cool, I'll take it for sure. Get me out of college, I want the money. But I'm running into all these instances where I realized I could have made more money by negotiating. And so, coming into the tech, coming in like for, people just trying to pursue these jobs, would you advise to negotiate? And if so, what are some ways that you learn to negotiate?
So I think it's interesting. I think in the United States, the don't talk about your salary thing is sort of the standard. And I don't really think that that's necessarily the standard internationally. So there are other countries where salaries are very transparent. So I think a couple things is one is do your research on things like Glassdoor or like within user experience design. there's actually this secret Google spreadsheet that if you ask permission, you can get access to it. And people will just anonymously plug in what their role is, how many years they've been working in the industry, and then what their salary is. And so everyone is basically kind of contributing to that document to create transparency within user experience so that other people have that knowledge to say like, oh, I've got 5 years of experience. This is what everyone else is making in this city. And that's really the rate that I should be going for. The other two things that I would mention is that in terms of negotiation tactics, typically the best advice is to not set a salary requirement going into the job interview process. Let them make an offer first. You might get surprised that they actually offer you more than you were expecting, and that's always a good thing. And then the second thing is that if I ever felt dissatisfied with my salary in the past, I left. And it's not always that I just left I think of The Simpsons with, not to The Simpsons, I think of Cartman in my head, like South Park, like F you guys, I'm going home. It's not like that. Like what I would do is I would go seek out other opportunities. I would still really work hard at my job, but I would start to shop around, and I would just basically look at myself like a product. And so if I ended up getting another job offer, I would just be transparent with that with my employer, and again with sort of a focus on salary, they would always want to know, well, what was the compensation package that they offered. And so I've had friends that have done this and gotten counteroffers at their current position that exceeded the offer of the new position, so they never had to change, they never had to go anywhere, and then they just got a better salary that they were very happy with. That's never happened to me. I've just left. So I was notorious for like jumping jobs every like 16 months, like pretty early in my career. So, but yeah, and not always for salary, like just because I wanted to do something new and different and interesting. So, but yeah, I think that's the advice that I have in a nutshell.
I'm definitely +1 to everything you said. Particularly, don't ask for a particular amount of money, like let them make the offer. Definitely having competitive offers where you can say, well, you could be straight. Like if you're able to secure 2 offers or more, being straight and say, hey, these guys offered me X, and you said Y, so let's see what we can do. I think negotiation is definitely important. You know what you're worth. You are valuable. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And it's yes. So I would say yes, and you also have to remember. So I've done a lot of startups, as we have, and you have to keep in mind, a lot of startups, they have limited funding, so you got to weigh that as well. And I know that I've been at other places where the last startup I worked at, they negotiated and they kind of basically shifted stock and salary around, and that's just another factor to keep in mind.
Yeah, so I think to add to that, so my background is mostly on startups, so I totally agree. Definitely, so I guess the negotiations could actually vary depending on what kind of company, how big the company is, if it's a public company versus a private company. So definitely for private companies, right, so you have to consider a total compensation package, not just the base compensation. So meaning stocks, is the company actually going IPO? Is there, although that's not generally guaranteed, right? But consider all those things, and definitely, I actually agree that on what they said about having the company actually give you an offer first, and that's then you counter, right? So and then now the dilemma is on them. There's some psychology on that, but that actually really is very helpful. And then but be prepared, right? So know what you want. And this, you should, when you talk to them, you should know how, like, what's the lowest you're okay to do, right? So I think it's very important that you're actually prepared in those conversations. What's the highest? What's your expectation? And also not just the base compensation, the stocks, also the help package, right? All these things matter, right? It adds up, right? So it definitely consider the entire compensation package.
I'm just gonna say +1 to all of that. I don't have anything great to add.
Okay. Yes, definitely negotiate. Definitely negotiate. I want to say I read a article. If you didn't negotiate your salary versus someone that did negotiate, the people that negotiated makes millions more in their lifetime than people that don't negotiate. It's a hard thing for people to do. It's very unnatural, right? When you go to a car dealership, you're almost like, I just want that one. Tell me how much it is. I'm gonna go. I don't want to negotiate with you. Like, it's really hard to negotiate. It's unnatural. For most places, and so I think, and it's also, I've been on the hiring side too, and it's also very kind of odd as well. But one thing that I hear a lot is that if you're going to ask for, like, let's say 5, 10, 15% more, they would rather counter offer with you than just absolutely say no, we're not going to hire you. Once they get to this point where they've decided that you're the one, right? They'll try to work with you, and I mean that's also a good thing too, to get to know either your hiring manager or the HR. It's to find that you can also kind of get a glimpse of what it's like to work there just by interacting and negotiating with them. So even if you can't negotiate a higher salary, you can still get things out of it that I think is very fruitful.
And one thing I want to add to that as well is I'm going into product design, and one thing that's been really helpful is talking to other women in product design that have just been very open about their salary and open about, like, oh, I was underpaid, or I found out that I was making $30,000 less than the guy doing the same exact job as me. And so I know it's uncomfortable, and I think that's been very helpful, just be open, especially as, like, women going into tech, where we're, like, the minority already, is to be very vocal about it. Like, talk to your peers, get to know, like, what people are making to better understand, like, what you can ask for. Because that's also the only way that we're gonna kind of get the wage gap connected, is if, like, especially, like, women help each other, and men can help as well, make sure that we all get paid what we deserve.
Hey, I wasn't here for any of the talks, so I apologize. But I do have a question for you guys. So I work in tech as well, work for both small startups and large startups, but I always find myself kind of seeking out, like, smaller projects on the side, trying to make something happen there. I just want to know if any of you guys have had the same experience, and if you find value in doing any of that.
Yes. No, sorry. For, like, the last, so about 5 years ago, I went independent consultant, and there's sort of a feast or famine process, especially initially with, like, starting up your own company. So we would regularly spin up side projects, and like, one of them actually turned to be, like, a pretty substantial project, where we like, incorporated it. We actually created stock. We, like, named people founders. We incorporated in Delaware. It's not, like, a huge deal, but it was like, oh, this might actually make money. So, like, we can basically on our downtime, we can sort of pour our time and energy into that. And the one thing that I've found about it and the reason why I so adamantly say yes is because we've learned, the group that has done this, we've learned so much, and we've pushed ourselves to, like, learn about new technology, or learn about new frameworks, or learn about new design patterns, or what have you. Like those types of efforts, I think, just continually, like, drive curiosity and refinement and improvement. And also, sorry, the one thing that I think is like the most motivating on any project is purpose. And so if you can find a side project where it really resonates with you, like if you don't have that in your full-time job, then you can sort of supplement like your own personal fulfillment by having a side gig that just like, aligns well with your own individual purpose.
I haven't had a side gig before, but I would say that doing something on the side, doing something for fun is the best thing you can do for your career. So I toyed with different things. I've always found a use for them somewhere. I've done Toastmasters, a public speaking club. I was in a business fraternity as a math major for some reason. I don't know why, but that's helped me tremendously in different things that I've done in completely not normal. I've tried to do them to kind of feel out like what's different. One thing I want to bring up is in machine learning there was the perceptron where they did the weights of machine learning. So what happened was they came out with a paper. Oh, hey, we found this way to do matrices and to have the machine learn to do something. And but the problem is that we couldn't get it to learn fast enough. We had to give it too much data. Until 10 years later, it turned out that the solution was backpropagation, which was what's called a gradient descent, which was solved centuries before in mathematics. And so it was knowing something else in a different region altogether that made something happen. And so if you can imagine like machine learning a decade ahead of its time from right now, it'd be so fascinating to see what it's like. And so I think nowadays, doing things outside of the norm, like biological evolution, where you're learning like genome sequencing, like the genomes, how they evolved to make better models, right? Learning different things and putting them all together, I think, is what would make tech amazing, and putting them all, and just things outside of tech.
Okay, since I'm gonna have to like cut it off because I do want to leave time for everyone to actually talk to each other after and everything. But I do want to thank everyone for coming. It's been amazing to just see everyone come out and for this group to grow. And we do, want to see like for the Facebook and LinkedIn groups, like if people are hiring or if you're looking for jobs, like how we can help each other. If you're interested in like mentoring, like I know George is interested. If anyone else is interested in mentoring or being you want a mentor, you want to be a mentee, like things like that, how we can help each other. I think that's really powerful for us to like really build this community, is to really build each other up with the opportunities that you're willing to give and whatever you need, and see who can help. Right now it's been me just posting to myself, so if anyone has any thoughts, I'm very happy to like hear everything, help make things happen. But I thank everyone for coming, thank all the panelists for coming. It's been great to see this. Let's keep growing this. Let's keep, doing more events, helping each other how we can. There's still some snacks and stuff around. Everyone go mingle, talk to each other, but let's see what we can do.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.